The letter was in the kitchen drawer, the one we keep miscellaneous things in. Batteries, rubber bands, a flashlight that may or may not still work. Takeout menus from restaurants that have probably closed. I found it on a Sunday morning in March, 8 months after my wife's diagnosis, when I was looking for a pen. It was in an envelope with my name on it, her handwriting. Careful, deliberate. The handwriting of a woman who had been an English teacher for 26 years and had opinions about penmanship. She had written, "For David, read when you are ready." My name is David, and I was not ready. I put the envelope back in the drawer, under the takeout menus, and I found a pen somewhere else, and I went to the living room and sat with my coffee and thought about the fact that my wife had written me a letter and left it in a drawer, and that I was not ready to read it. I left it there for 3 weeks. My wife's name is Patricia. She is 54 years old. She was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease in July of last year, after 14 months of symptoms that we had attributed to stress, to the ordinary pressures of a demanding job, to perimenopause, to the particular wear of being 53. She forgot a meeting. She forgot the name of a student she had taught for a semester. She lost her keys repeatedly, which we joked about. She repeated questions within minutes of asking them, which we did not joke about, but found gentle explanations for. I was the one who finally said, "We should see someone." I said it on a Thursday evening in May, after she asked me the same question about a dinner party we were planning 3 times in 20 minutes, and looked at me each time with the same expression, slightly uncertain, as if the previous conversation had not happened, because, for her, it had not. She looked at me when I suggested it. She said, "You think something is wrong." I said, "I think we should find out." She said, "I think so too. I've been afraid to say it." Before I tell you the rest, subscribe, because every story on this channel is real, it is raw, and it will stay with you. And drop a comment right now. Where in the world are you watching from? I read every single one. Now let me tell you. We went to her primary care doctor, who referred us to a neurologist who did tests over several weeks, who referred us to a specialist at the university hospital, who told us in July what we had been circling around for months without the word for it. Patricia sat very straight in the specialist's office when we heard. She is a person who sits straight, who has always sat straight, who once told me that her grandmother told her that good posture was the first form of self-respect. She sat straight in the specialist's office and asked questions in a clear voice about medications, about the trajectory, about what early onset meant for the timeline, about what we could expect. I held her hand. I could not do what she was doing, which was thinking clearly and asking the right questions. I could only hold her hand and listen and try to hold myself together well enough that she did not have to hold me together too. We drove home in silence. We made dinner. We ate it. She washed the dishes and I dried them, and then we sat in the living room and she said, "Okay. Tell me what you are thinking." I said, "I don't know what I'm thinking yet." She said, "That's fair. I don't either." She said, "I need you to know something. I need you to know that I am still here. For now, I am completely here. And I need us to use the time that I am here well." I said, "Okay." She said, "I need you to promise me that you will not spend the time I am still here grieving the time when I won't be." I could not promise that. I told her so. I said, "I will try. I cannot promise." She said, "That's enough. Trying is enough." About the 8 months between that July and the Sunday morning when I found the letter in the kitchen drawer, the first months after the diagnosis were, strangely, some of the most present I have ever felt in my own life. Patricia had said, "Use the time well." And so we tried to do that. We took a trip to the Oregon coast, which we had talked about for years and never done. We spent a weekend with her sister Carol in Spokane. We went through photographs and talked about them, not in a mournful way, but in the way of two people who have a shared history and are making time to be in it together. She wrote things down. This was something the neurologist had suggested and that Patricia took seriously, a practice of writing, of documenting, of putting on paper the things she wanted to remember and the things she wanted me to have. She wrote in a notebook she kept on the nightstand. Sometimes she read passages to me. Sometimes she did not. The disease progressed the way the doctors had described, which is to say, steadily and without mercy, and also not as fast as I had feared in the first weeks after the diagnosis, when I had allowed myself to look at the worst projections and had spent several nights lying awake doing math I could not stop doing. The forgetting was not uniform. She remembered our wedding, which had been 28 years ago, with clarity and detail. The garden in Eugene where we married, the rain that had threatened and then held off, the dress her mother had helped her choose. She remembered our daughters, Sophie and Claire, who lived in different cities and who called more frequently now, and who had absorbed the diagnosis each in her own way. Sophie with the focused, practical attention of someone who researches solutions. Claire with the grief she wore openly and without apology. She sometimes forgot what she had said in the last hour. She sometimes forgot the name of a colleague she had worked with for a decade. She sometimes looked at me in the middle of a sentence with an expression of brief confusion, like a person who has lost their place in a book, and then found her way back. I learned to wait when she lost her place. I learned not to finish her sentences. I learned that the waiting was a form of respect, that stepping in to complete what she was reaching for was easier for me and harder for her, that my ease in those moments was less important than her dignity. This is one of the things you learn. There were others. I learned that some mornings were better than others, and that the better mornings were gifts to be used and not saved. I learned that when she was tired, the forgetting was worse, and that her fatigue was not always visible, that I had to pay attention to the specific quality of her stillness to know when she was spent. I learned that she wanted, above all, to be treated as herself, not as a patient, not as a condition, not as something to be managed carefully, but as Patricia, who had opinions about penmanship and made very good soup, and had been in love with me, she sometimes said, since the second time she saw me, not the first. The first time, she said, I was wearing a terrible shirt. She still said this, as recently as 2 weeks ago. Some things stay. I found the letter on a Sunday. 3 weeks later, on another Sunday, I opened the drawer and took it out. I sat at the kitchen table. Patricia was still asleep. The house was quiet in the specific way it is quiet on Sunday mornings, which is different from weekday quiet, slower and without agenda. I held the envelope for a while. Then I opened it. She had written 8 pages. Her handwriting was careful throughout, the handwriting of someone who knew she was writing something that mattered and who wanted it to be legible, to be worthy of the message it was carrying. I am going to tell you some of what she wrote, not all of it. Some of it belongs only to me. She began by telling me when she had written it. October, she said, 4 months after the diagnosis, before the symptoms had progressed much beyond what they were at the time of the diagnosis. She was writing it, she said, because she wanted me to have something from her that was fully her, fully present, fully intentional, not touched by the forgetting. She wrote, I want you to have proof that I was here, and that I knew what I had, and that what I had was enough, more than enough. I want you to have that in my handwriting, which I know you will recognize, so that when things are different, you will have this to hold. I put the pages down on the table. I went to the window. It was raining, which in the Pacific Northwest in March is unremarkable. I watched the rain on the window for a while. Then I went back to the table. She wrote about our daughters. She wrote about Sophie's laugh, which she said had been the same since Sophie was 3 years old, a sound like the start of a surprise. She wrote about Claire's hands, which she said looked like her own mother's hands, which made her feel, when she held them, that something was continuous across time in a way she could not explain, but that she trusted. She wrote about our house, about the kitchen specifically, the window above the sink that gets good morning light, the drawer where she had placed this letter, the particular smell of Sunday mornings when I make coffee and she makes toast and neither of us is in a hurry. She wrote, I want you to know that I have been happy here, in this kitchen, on Sunday mornings, for 28 years. She wrote about the disease. She wrote about it without bitterness, which is the thing I had been afraid she would not be able to do, and which she had, as it turned out, done. She wrote, I am not angry about it. I have been, and I may be again. But what I want to tell you from this place where I still have all of my words is that the anger has not been the main thing. The main thing has been you. She wrote about me. I will not tell you all of it. I will tell you that she used the word lucky, and that she described specific mornings and evenings that I had not known she had noticed in the particular ways she had noticed them. She wrote, I want you to know what you looked like to me, because I may not be able to tell you later, so I am telling you now. She told me. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time with her 8 pages. The rain continued. The coffee went cold. Somewhere in the house, Patricia began to move. I heard her in the bedroom, the particular sound of her, the specific pattern of it, which I have been listening to for 28 years without knowing I was memorizing it. She came into the kitchen in her robe. She looked at me. She looked at the pages on the table. She said, You found it. I said, Yes. She sat down across from me. She said, Are you okay? I said, No. She said, That's okay. I said, When did you write it? She said, October. I wanted to do it while I was sure of everything, while I was sure of you. I said, You can always be sure of me. She said, I know, but I wanted to say it while I could say it right, the way I mean it, not reached for, just there. I understood what she meant. There is a difference between a thing you find when you reach for it and a thing that is simply present, immediate, fully itself. She had wanted to give me the fully present version. She had put it in a drawer in October and waited for me to be ready. I was not sure I had been ready. I was not sure ready was the right word for what I had finally been, 3 weeks after finding it, when I sat down and opened the envelope. But I had opened it, and now I had the 8 pages, which I have read many times since, and which I keep in the drawer beneath the takeout menus, beside where she had placed them. The months since I found the letter have continued the way the months before it continued, steadily, some days better than others, the forgetting neither faster nor slower than what we had been told to expect. Patricia still teaches 2 days a week, a reduced schedule she negotiated with the school, work that she says keeps her anchored and that I can see is true. She still makes soup. She still has opinions about penmanship. She still tells me sometimes that she has been in love with me since the second time she saw me. She still knows our daughter's laughs and hands. She still comes into the kitchen on Sunday mornings in her robe and looks at me. Some things stay. I do not know for how long. This is the thing I carry. The knowledge that the staying is not guaranteed, that the particular quality of her presence, the quickness, the humor, the Sunday mornings fully present, is finite in a way that I cannot change and can only receive for as long as it is here. She told me not to spend the time she is still here grieving the time when she will not be. I try. Some days I manage it. Some days I sit in the kitchen with my coffee and watch the morning light on the window above the sink, and I cannot hold both things at once, her presence and the knowledge of what is coming, and one of them fills the whole room. On those days, she usually finds me there. She comes in and looks at me, and sometimes she knows what I am carrying, and sometimes she does not. And either way, she sits down across from me, and we have coffee together in the good morning light, and that is enough. Not everything, but enough. I called our daughter Sophie last week. She asked how things were. I said, "We had a good week." She said, "Tell me about it." I told her about a walk we had taken to the waterfront on Thursday, which had been sunny, and about the soup Patricia had made on Friday, and about a movie we had watched Saturday evening that had made Patricia laugh 3 times. The laugh, Sophie said, had been the same since she was 3 years old, the one that sounds like the start of a surprise. Sophie was quiet on the phone for a moment. Then she said, "That sounds like a good week." I said, "It was a good week." She said, "Are you okay, Dad?" I said, "Yes," in the complicated way that is still okay. She said, "I love you." I said, "I love you too. Call your mother tomorrow." She said, "I always do." She does. Both of them do. They have become more present since the diagnosis, which is one of the true things about hard seasons. They clarify what matters to people. I have watched our daughters become more deliberate in their love, which is not a small thing to witness. Patricia's sister Carol came last weekend. They sat in the kitchen for 4 hours on Saturday. I heard them laughing twice. I heard them crying once, briefly, and then not anymore. When Carol left, she held Patricia for a long time in the doorway, and then looked at me over Patricia's shoulder, and her eyes said something that did not need words, and I nodded, and that was enough. The letter is in the drawer. I put it back after I read it the first time, and it lives there now alongside the batteries and the rubber bands and the flashlight that may or may not still work. I take it out sometimes, not often, when I need the version of her that is fully present and fully intentional, put down on paper in October in the handwriting I would recognize anywhere. She wrote, near the end of the 8 pages, "I want you to know that the life we built together is exactly what I would have chosen if I had known everything in advance. Every ordinary thing. The kitchen, the Sunday mornings, you. I would have chosen all of it." I read that sentence many times. I keep coming back to it. Not because it resolves anything. It does not resolve anything. The disease is still the disease, and the forgetting is still the forgetting, and the future is still what it is. But because it is true, and because she said it while she had all her words and meant it fully, and because I have it in her handwriting, and I can hold it whenever I need to. She is in the garden right now, doing something with the roses. It is April. The light is good. She is wearing the blue cardigan she bought in Portland 2 summers ago and has always loved, which she has not forgotten, which she sometimes still reaches for in the morning without thinking. The blue cardigan on the hook. Some things stay. I'm going to go outside now. I'm going to sit on the porch steps with my coffee and watch her in the garden. I'm going to be here, in this moment, in this good light, with this woman in her blue cardigan, who wrote me 8 pages in October and put them in a kitchen drawer and waited for me to be ready. She told me not to grieve the time when she is not here, while she is still here. Today, I am not going to do that. Today, I am going to drink my coffee and watch the light on the roses and listen to her moving in the garden and be grateful for the Sunday morning and the good light and the letter in the drawer and everything that is still here. That is enough. More than enough. I want to tell you what the weeks look like now, in the specific way that weeks look when they are organized around a person you love and the knowledge of what is coming. Monday, Patricia teaches. She leaves at 7:45 and I watch her go from the kitchen window, the blue cardigan or the gray one, her bag over one shoulder, her posture straight the way it has always been. And she goes to her car and drives to the school where she has taught for 26 years. And she teaches for 4 hours, and then she comes home. Some Mondays she comes home energized, and some Mondays she comes home spent. And I can tell which it has been before she says a word, from the specific way she sets her bag down in the entryway. Tuesday we walk. We have been walking since the diagnosis, a deliberate choice, something the neurologist suggested and that we have made our own, a route along the waterfront that takes about an hour and that has the particular quality of consistency that I think both of us need. We know every bench along that route. We have favorites. She has a bench she prefers near the inlet where the herons sometimes stand in the shallows, and when a heron is there, she always stops and waits, patient in the way she is patient with things she considers worth waiting for. Wednesday, I work. I am a civil engineer, mostly retired now, consulting part-time for a firm I worked with for 30 years. The work keeps me useful and keeps my mind occupied and gives Patricia mornings to herself, which she values. She told me early on, I need you not to watch me. I need to know you're there, but I need space to be myself without being observed. I understood this. I try to give her that. Thursday is for the garden, if the weather allows, for cooking, if it does not. Patricia is a better cook than I am, and she has not forgotten how to cook, which is one of the things that has stayed. Her hands know things her mind does not need to remind them of. She moves through the kitchen with a certainty that is different from the uncertainty that appears in other moments, and I understand that this is the muscle memory of decades, the knowledge that is stored somewhere the disease has not yet reached. Friday, Sophie calls. Claire calls Sunday. Both of them call on Patricia's better days more easily than her harder ones, which is not a criticism. I call on her better days more easily too. Love does not make you immune to the difficulty of witnessing difficulty. Our daughters love their mother completely, and it costs them something each week to see her, and I love them for continuing to pay it. Saturday we have no plan. Sometimes we go somewhere, the farmer's market, a bookstore, a drive along the coast when the weather is good. Sometimes we stay home and do nothing in particular, which has become a thing we are better at than we were before the diagnosis, when doing nothing felt like something was missing. Nothing feels like enough now. The ordinary is enough. Sunday morning, coffee and toast, the kitchen light. This is the shape of a week. It is a small shape, and it contains everything. I spoke to a man named Gerald at the neurologist's office last fall, in the waiting room where people sit with their people and wait for news or instructions or a steady hand. Gerald's wife had been diagnosed 3 years before Patricia. He was in his early 60s, lean, with the careful posture of someone who has learned to hold himself together by keeping his back straight. We talked for 20 minutes while our wives were with the doctor. He said, "It gets different. Not easier, different. I said, "What does different look like?" He said, "You find out what you are made of." Not in the way people mean that when they're trying to be encouraging, in the actual way. You find out, specifically, what you can do and what you cannot do and what you need help with. You find out who shows up. I asked, "Who showed up for you?" He named people: a neighbor, a colleague, his wife's sister, a friend from college he had not been close to in years who had called one day and simply said, "I heard. I'm here. What do you need?" I asked, "What did you need?" He said, "Mostly someone to say it out loud with. Someone who didn't need me to be okay about it." I have thought about that many times since. The particular gift of someone who does not need you to be okay about it. My brother Nathan has been that person. He lives in Seattle, 2 hours away, and he comes once a month and sits in my kitchen and does not need me to be okay about it. He lets me say the things I cannot say to Patricia, because she has her own version of this to carry and does not need mine added to it. He lets me say, "I'm afraid." He lets me say, "I don't know how to do this." He says, "I know. I'm here." And then we make dinner and eat it and talk about other things, and the next morning he drives back to Seattle, and I feel, for a few days, like I have put something down and rested. Patricia knows he comes for me as much as for her. She told me once, "I'm glad you have Nathan. You need someone who is just for you." I said, "I have you." She said, "You have me as much as you have me. That's different now." She said this without bitterness. She said it as a statement of fact, which is what it was, and which is something I have had to learn to receive. The facts of this thing, stated plainly, without softening. She is better at the plain facts than I am. She always has been. 28 years of watching her tell the truth about hard things, and still I have not entirely learned it. I am learning. There is a support group I attend on the second Thursday of each month. 8 people in a church basement, all of them in some version of what I am in, all of them carrying the specific weight of loving someone whose self is becoming less available by degrees. We do not give advice. We do not try to fix each other's situations. We simply sit in the specific community of people who know what this is from the inside, who do not need things explained, who understand the particular grammar of this loss. I did not want to go at first. Patricia told me to go. She said, "You need people who understand it. I can't be the one who understands it for you. I'm in it too." She was right. She is usually right. This has not changed. The group is led by a woman named Dr. Helen Marsh, who is not a therapist in the clinical sense, but who has a gift for holding space without filling it, for asking the questions that open things rather than the questions that close them. She asked me once, in one of my first sessions, "What do you want people to know about Patricia? Not about the diagnosis, about her." I thought about this for a long time. Then I said, "I want people to know that she is still herself, that the Patricia who is here now is still completely Patricia. The humor, the opinions, the specific way she moves through a room. She is still entirely herself. The disease has not taken that yet." Helen said, "Hold on to that. Say it as often as you need to." I say it often. Last week, Patricia and I drove to the coast. We go several times a year when the weather allows. It is a 2-hour drive, and we play music and talk and sometimes do not talk. And when we arrive, the ocean is there, which is always something. The specific always something of the ocean. We walked on the beach for an hour. It was a Tuesday, cold and clear, almost no one else there. She walked beside me with her hands in her pockets and her face turned into the wind, and she looked like herself. Like the woman I married in the garden in Eugene in the rain that threatened and held off. Like the woman who told me, on our third date, that she had been in love with me since the second time she saw me because the first time I was wearing a terrible shirt. She said, standing at the waterline, looking at the ocean, "I love this." I said, "Me too." She said, "I love that we still come here." I said, "We'll keep coming." She looked at me. She said, "Promise?" I said, "I promise." She nodded. We stood there for a while in the wind. The ocean did what the ocean does, which is everything and nothing simultaneously, constant and indifferent, and also, in some way I have never been able to articulate, comforting. She put her hand in mine. We walked back to the car. I am keeping that afternoon, the cold and the wind and the ocean and her hand. I am keeping it along with the 8 pages in the kitchen drawer, along with the Tuesday walks and the blue cardigan on the hook and the Sunday mornings and the soup and the laugh that Sophie says has been the same since she was 3 years old. I am keeping all of it. There will be a time, the doctors have told us, when the keeping will be mine alone. When the things I am keeping will be things she can no longer keep with me. I know this. I hold it. I do not hold it well some days, and I hold it better on others. And in between, there are Tuesday walks and Thursday soup and Saturday mornings with no plan and a woman in a blue cardigan moving through a garden in April light. She is still here, fully here, looking at the roses in the good light. I am going to go outside now. I want to say one more thing. For anyone who is listening to this and who is in the middle of something similar, not the same, nothing is exactly the same, but something in the same family of hard, the kind of hard that settles in for the long stay, that is not an event, but a condition, that asks something of you every single day without exception. I want to say, find the Geralds. Find the people in the waiting rooms, the people who have been in it longer, the people who can tell you what different looks like, because they are already living in it. They exist. They are in the waiting rooms and the church basements and the walking groups and the online forums. They know things you do not know yet, and they will tell you if you ask. I want to say, let someone be the person who doesn't need you to be okay about it. You need that person. You cannot do this with only the people who need you to be okay. Find the Nathan in your life and let him come and sit in your kitchen and let you say the things you cannot say anywhere else. I want to say, pay attention to the ordinary, the coffee, the morning light, the specific way your person moves through a room, the things they still know, the things that have stayed, the Tuesday morning walks and the soup and the laugh that has been the same since they were young. Pay attention to all of it. You are keeping it, even when you do not know you are. You are keeping it every moment you are present in it. And I want to say, the letter in the drawer. Whatever form it takes for you, a recorded message, a voice note, a text you have saved, a moment you remember with exact clarity. Find it. Hold it. Put it somewhere you can return to when you need the version that is fully present, fully there, fully itself. Patricia wrote, I want you to have proof that I was here and that I knew what I had. I have it. I keep it in a drawer in our kitchen, under the takeout menus, between the batteries and the flashlight that may or may not still work. She is in the garden. The light is good. The roses will bloom in June. I am going outside now. I am going to sit on the porch steps and drink my coffee and watch her in the garden in the April light and be here, completely here, in this moment that is mine. There is something I want to say about the specific texture of caregiving that nobody warned me about. Not the practical things, the medications, the appointments, the careful watching. Those things are hard, but they are learnable. What nobody warned me about was the emotional geometry of it, the way love and grief and presence and loss all occupy the same space at the same time, without canceling each other out. I love Patricia completely. I am grieving her in the specific way you grieve someone who is still here. I am present with her every day. I am already in some part of myself preparing for a future I cannot fully imagine. All four of these things are true simultaneously, and they do not resolve into a single feeling. They stay separate and together, the way the notes of a chord stay separate and together, making something that is more than any one of them alone. I did not know this was possible before Patricia's diagnosis. I thought grief required absence. I thought love required certainty about the future. I thought presence meant not thinking about loss. I was wrong about all of it. What I know now is that you can hold contradictory things, that the human capacity for complexity is larger than I had understood, that a Tuesday walk along the waterfront in the particular September light of the Pacific Northwest, with the herons in the shallows and Patricia beside me with her hands in her pockets, that this can be, simultaneously, one of the most beautiful things I have ever experienced, and one of the most painful. Not beautiful despite the pain, not painful despite the beauty, both fully at once. This is what I would want anyone in a similar situation to know. Not that it gets easier, because I cannot promise that, but that the complexity itself is survivable, that you can carry more than you think you can, that the love does not get smaller because grief is also present. If anything, the love gets more specific, more attentive to particular mornings, particular words, particular ways a person holds their coffee cup or turns toward a window or laughs at something on the television. Patricia laughed last night at something on the television. It was her laugh, the one Sophie says has been the same since she was 3 years old, the one that sounds like the start of a surprise. I looked at her from across the room and thought, there she is, right there, fully herself. She caught me looking. She said, "What?" I said, "Nothing, just looking." She said, "You're always looking at me." I said, "I know." She turned back to the television. I kept watching for another moment. The lamplight on her face, the blue cardigan, the particular way she holds herself, straight-backed, her grandmother's lesson about self-respect still present in her spine after all these years. These are the things I am keeping, every one of them. I am going to go outside now and sit on the porch steps with my coffee and watch the April light on the garden and be here, in this moment, with everything it contains. That is enough. It has always been enough. That is the story I am keeping.